Cleanse all anguish and pain. Do not let the mind wander outside, nor allow it to be agitated within. As a Zen master, I have observed many practitioners and noticed that many of them allow their minds to drift without mindfulness, wanting to assist you in understanding the true nature of the mind's restlessness or its tendency to disperse. I wish to remind you of the following teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha taught not to let the mind wander outside, nor to allow it to become stagnant inside. Those who can maintain mindfulness in such a way will surely eradicate all suffering. Firstly, I would like to say that anyone who practices meditation earnestly can consider themselves a practitioner. Those who wish to escape suffering can apply the teachings above from the Blessed One. However, it is quite challenging to know which direction we should choose to make progress. What constitutes a wandering mind, and how can we ensure that the mind does not roam? We believe this issue is not difficult. Every meditator has experienced the phenomenon of a wandering mind, and we have the ability to use our own strength to halt it. An industrious meditator can control the mind to prevent restlessness. So, if the mind is not disturbed, it must remain focused within. But the Buddha also taught that we should not let the mind become stagnant inside. So how should we proceed? We shouldn't let the mind be focused outside, nor should we allow it to be stagnant within. So what should we do? Surely you must know that the mind resides within us. If you focus on what is happening in the present moment, then the mind is engaged within. If it is not outside, then focus on the inside. The mind must indeed stay within. So what should be done? Do we merely need to drink a sleeping potion to be at ease? However, doing so would contradict the Buddha's teachings, as the mind would still be confined within. What should we do then? But the Buddha has asserted that if we follow his instructions correctly, we will be freed from suffering. After delivering this statement, the Buddha returned to his dwelling. Some listeners who lacked the wisdom to fully grasp the Buddha's words humbly requested the elder Kaccayana to explicate further. Elder Kaccayana is an arhat, endowed with a unique talent to explain the succinct utterances of the Buddha. He clarifies the Buddha's riddle. The statement above is also a riddle meant to test our intelligence. I suggest you begin by asking yourselves what happens when the mind is not controlled. How does the mind react to objects? When the mind comes into contact with something pleasant, it becomes filled with craving. At that moment, we refer to it as a restless or wandering mind. Likewise, if the mind encounters an unpleasant object filled with hatred, it is also a manifestation of a restless or wandering mind. When the mind does not clearly understand what is happening, becoming filled with delusion, it is yet another instance of a wandering or restless mind. When the mind is restless or wandering, it indicates that it has strayed outward. Due to the lack of mindfulness, the mind does not perceive the true nature of objects. Consequently, this creates conditions for hatred and delusion to arise. The Buddha often advises us not to let the mind fall into hatred and delusion. When perceiving, hearing, smelling, throwing, or touching, these are all considered forms of dispersion of the mind, the process of sensation, mindfulness, and lack of mindfulness. All these processes of the six senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and the mind, do not possess any inherently good or bad characteristics. When the six senses come into contact with their respective objects, if we do not promptly maintain mindfulness, a series of mental events will ensue, along with craving, aversion, and ignorance. The purpose of insight meditation is to assist us in maintaining mindfulness to see objects according to their true nature, without letting attachments and aversions take over. By doing so, we will be able to halt the flow of unwholesome thoughts. At that point, mental dispersion will not occur. Thus, mental dispersion or thought distraction is the mind tainted by disturbances when it comes into contact with objects. In practice, when interacting with an object, if we analyze or dissect it, that is referred to as mental dispersion. For instance, when a color strikes our vision, we will have a reaction. Oh, this color is beautiful. Or, why is this color so hideous? That indicates we have dispersed our minds. Conversely, if while observing a color we make an effort to maintain mindfulness and diligence, that is the opportunity for us to see the process of seeing. It is a chance to develop wisdom, allowing us to clearly understand the relationship between body and mind, their causal relationships, as well as the characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and non-self inherent in them. You can experiment right now by focusing on the movement of the abdomen. If the mind diligently and accurately maintains mindfulness on that movement, it will clearly notice the motion from the moment it begins until it ceases, at which point craving, aversion, and ignorance cannot intrude. At that time, there will be no thoughts about pleasant or unpleasant sensations, and there will be no confusion or misunderstanding about what is happening. Often, while concentrating on the movement of the abdomen, a sudden strong movement may arise. This strong movement surpasses the subtle movements, shifting the mind's focus onto a new object. Even though one is aware, it cannot be deemed mental dispersion if we immediately recognize the movement and continuously note it without thinking about the cause that produces the movement. There is also no need to know what kind of movement it is. If this is achieved, then there will be no craving, aversion, or ignorance at that moment. For example, when a sound interrupts our concentration, if our mind becomes tangled and recognizes it as a familiar sound, such as hearing a song or a particular tune, our mind starts to reminisce or recall. We may remember having heard this sound before, the singer of this song, the author, and so forth. Then, we drift away from the present moment and become completely immersed in the melody, forgetting that we are meditating, leading to the habit of swaying and moving with the tune. This is being overwhelmed by mental dispersion. There was a meditator who was mindfully seated, observing the subject matter calmly and beautifully. Suddenly, another meditator sitting next to her got up hurriedly, causing a disturbance. The meditator could clearly hear the faint sound of joints cracking and the rustling of clothing. Immediately, the meditation practitioner hears the crunching sound of the joints of the body. It is quite thoughtless, despite the awareness, to stand up and disrupt while one is meditating so comfortably. This is the cause of the arising of distraction, which can be called a great release of the mind. Most meditation practitioners have avoided this state today, thanks to the effort of maintaining mindfulness moment by moment, without reacting when an object arises. This way, they are not influenced by distraction. The states of concentration without distraction or dispersion mean that the mind maintains accurate and timely mindfulness regarding what is happening. When the mind is fully aware and continuously engages with everything happening, it enters a state known as concentration. Concentration means that the mind firmly holds on to the object and observes that object. Imagine that you see something lying in the mud and want to pick it up. You carefully use a sharp stick to dig into that object and then lift it up. If you are not sure what that object is, now you have the opportunity to see more clearly. Just as when you sit at the dining table, you use a fork to eat your food. These two examples illustrate what the factor of concentration or the state of concentration is like. Types of concentration in samatha meditation. There are two types of concentration: concentration in samatha meditation or tranquil meditation, and concentration in vipassana meditation. Some of you have read books and have become aware of the levels of concentration in meditation, which might come as a surprise. Why do I mention the levels of concentration in vipassana meditation? When concentrating in samatha meditation, at that moment, the mind entirely focuses closely on a single object. An image in the mind, for example, as the mind concentrates on a red plate or a light, the mind is firmly attached to that object without being disturbed or shifting elsewhere. Thus, the meditator focuses on the object until the mind completely settles upon it. Gradually, they advance into the state of concentration through various levels of meditation. There are many different levels of meditation. Each level has its unique characteristics. Levels of concentration in vipassana meditation. Concentration in vipassana meditation surpasses concentration in samatha meditation, in that the mind shifts from one object to another and establishes itself regarding the characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and non-self of all objects. Concentration in vipassana also encompasses situations where the mind is focused and firmly attached to tranquility. While the goal of samatha meditation is to achieve a state of mental peace and concentration, the goal of vipassana meditation is to attain different levels of wisdom and liberation. Concentration in Vipassana is the settling of the mind onto ultimate reality. Ultimate reality is what we can directly experience through the 6 sensory faculties. Most of what we recognize or focus on through the 6 sensory faculties is the ultimate reality of phenomena. This is the constant change of physical and mental phenomena. Nibbana is also an ultimate reality, but Nibbana does not change. Nibbana is an unconditioned phenomenon without conditions. To clarify the matter, let us consider the process of breathing, the sensations that we perceive in the abdomen while observing the movement of the abdomen. That is the ultimate reality. The purpose of focusing on the movement of the abdomen is to see clearly the characteristics and nature of the phenomena occurring here. When you focus on the qualities of observation, tension, elasticity, mobility, hardness, softness, heat, cold, etc., then you have developed the levels of concentration in insight meditation. When observing what occurs at the 6 sense doors, we also employ similar methods as mentioned above. If there is diligent effort and correct mindfulness, focusing on what is happening at a particular sense door, we can understand the truth or the true nature of what is occurring at this sense door. Understanding the truth at the sense doors means seeing the unique and common characteristics of name and form, or body and mind. It is also necessary to reiterate here how the unique characteristics of name and form are recognized through the practice of meditation. In meditation, we observe the wholesome phenomena of name and form. When making diligent efforts and focusing with proper mindfulness, the first progress is that we see the unique characteristics of name and form. The unique characteristic of name or mind is the recognition of an object, including consciousness, feeling, perception, intention, mindfulness, concentration, sorrow, tranquility, wisdom, etc. The unique characteristic of form or body consists of the 4 great elements, the qualities of hardness and softness, earth, heat and cold, fire, movement, solidity, vibration, wind, and the properties of being sticky or fluid, water. Both name and form undergo phases of arising, duration, and cessation. This is the characteristic of dependent origination, or the intermediate characteristic. The meditator will clearly see the intermediate characteristics before clarifying the common characteristics of name and form, which lead to impermanence, suffering, and non-self. There are 4 levels of meditation based on a classification system. The first level of meditation consists of 5 meditative factors, and all these factors are important in the practice of insight meditation. The first meditative factor is called vicara, which refers to the act of directing attention precisely and directly to an object. Vicara also has the characteristic of applying attention to the object. The second meditative factor is sukha, or joy. After directing attention to the object, joy continues to reinforce, refine, and observe the object. You can experience this. When observing the movement of the abdomen, first you must have diligent effort to focus on the process of the abdominal movement. Then the mind concentrates on the object without slipping away or detaching from the object, leading the mind to the object and observing it. When the mind remains mindful from one moment to the next accurately and continuously, it gradually becomes clearer and more pristine. The most significant hindrances, which are the 5 obstacles, greed, hatred, boredom, restlessness, and doubt, diminish and eventually disappear. The mind becomes pure, tranquil, and calm. This clarity and calmness is brought about by the 2 meditative factors of mind and body. This state of clarity and tranquility is called viveka, which means seclusion or habitation. The mind is safely and securely sheltered, completely free from hindrances. This state of seclusion or habitation is not an element of concentration. It is merely a term describing the state of seclusion or habitation of the mind. The third meditative factor is piti, which means happiness, joy, in the presence of what is happening. This meditative factor can manifest through physical sensations, such as shivering, tingling, feeling light, as if being lifted off the ground, etc. The fourth jhana factor is called pleasure. Sukha means gentleness, joy, and happiness, following elation. The mind experiencing pleasure brings satisfaction to one engaged in meditation, as both the third and fourth jhana factors are the result of withdrawal from disturbances. Hence, they are referred to as the peace of joy and happiness born from seclusion. Think of this continuous chain of cause and effect. The mind's tranquility is achieved through the interaction of the first two jhana factors. When the mind properly directs itself toward an object, completely grasping it and focusing intently on it, after some time the mind will attain seclusion. Due to the mind's withdrawal from afflictive disturbances, one feels calm and comforted. When the first four jhana factors are present, the mind naturally becomes tranquil, composed, and easily able to penetrate what occurs without being influenced by distractions. This single-pointedness is the fifth jhana factor. To reach the first level of the jhana characterized by clear comprehension, one must possess insight into the nature of phenomena. These five jhana factors are not sufficient to attain the first stage of clear meditation. The mind must penetrate into the object momentarily to clarify the relation of suffering between body and mind. Only at that moment can we say that we have attained the first level of clear meditation. A meditator who fully possesses these five jhana factors will have a more accurate and insightful mindfulness. That is to say, the mind is more precisely focused on the object than before. An experience of pleasure and happiness, comfort and nobility manifests. This may be an occasion for the meditator to savor and relish the exquisite flavor of the calm achieved. The meditator may become attached to this serene happiness and reflect, "Oh, how wonderful! Now everything becomes clear and bright before my eyes. I feel light as if floating on air." These thoughts arise at the time of attachment, during concentration, and in tranquility. The mind may become aligned internally. Anyone can become attached to pleasure, happiness, and comforting gentleness. Attachment to the progress occurring within us is a form of subtle craving, distinct from ordinary craving. Ordinary craving is attachment to the pleasures of the five senses. It is essential to recognize promptly the cravings that directly arise from this tranquility, so they do not become obstacles in attaining calmness. If one can directly recognize these states of tranquility and stillness without being enamored by them or longing for the higher bliss brought about by tranquility, then the mind is not agitated internally. These are the matters the Buddha wished to remind us of. In summary, do not let the mind drift externally. It is vital to mindfully recognize accurately what is happening without being influenced by them or becoming overly attached to phenomena. Do not allow the mind to become agitated internally. Rather, it should avoid attachment and obsession with progress, meaning the joy or calm currently arising within us, which comes from skillful meditation practice. We can delve deeper into this issue. 3 forms of seclusion. The aforementioned verses remind us that while meditating, we should avoid the following. Avoid contact with sensual pleasures and unwholesome states of mind. To achieve this, one must practice 3 types of seclusion or tranquility, consisting of bodily seclusion, kaya viveka, and mental seclusion, chitta viveka. The first type, the seclusion from distractions, is the result of bodily seclusion and mental seclusion. Seclusion from disturbances means that the mind is not dominated by distractions and hindrances. Bodily seclusion does not refer to this physical body alone. The term body here refers to the sensual pleasures of the 5 sense faculties. Therefore, bodily seclusion means to distance oneself from the sensual pleasures of the 5 sense faculties, which consist of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and tangibles. Mental seclusion refers to the avoidance of any unwholesome states of mind, which includes mental seclusion. Mental seclusion is the escape from all disturbances that hinder the development of concentration and insight. In practice, mental seclusion means maintaining mindfulness actively from moment to moment. Any type of meditation that can sustain mindfulness from this moment to the next has achieved mental seclusion. Without diligent and earnest effort, these 2 types of seclusion will never be attained. To achieve bodily seclusion, we must avoid places that can give rise to the sensual pleasures of the 5 sense faculties. Seek out suitable places for meditation to help the mind attain tranquility and calmness. Naturally, merely being in a place devoid of distractions is not enough. To achieve mental seclusion, it requires us to be mindful of all the objects that arise through the opening of the sense doors. To maintain mindfulness, we must focus the mind on the object. Diligent acknowledgement is an effective means to help the mind maintain accurate mindfulness on every object of the sense doors. Focusing the mind, or putting the mind accurately on the subject, is the first factor of meditation that must be accompanied by a keen intention and the effort to observe the movements of the belly until the mind comes to the subject. This means that you clearly acknowledge the sensations of tension, hardness, softness, and movement gradually. As such, the mind begins to rest on the subject and thoroughly engage with it. This is the foundation of which we have spoken previously. After thoroughly engaging with the subject for a while, the mind settles and completely immerses itself in the subject. When the mind is on the subject of the movements of the belly, thoughts occur infrequently. Often, during a considerable span of time, you may not have a single thought or distraction arise. At such moments, the mind has been freed from the objects of sensual pleasures and the disturbances produced by these objects. During that time, both bodily seclusion and mental seclusion are present. As you continue to meditate with determined effort and continuous care, the disturbances will diminish. Thus, you obtain the third type of seclusion, which is the seclusion from disturbances, a special kind of happiness. When experiencing the seclusion from disturbances, the mind becomes pliable, flexible, adaptive, refined, and relaxed. At that time, a unique happiness arises, which is the happiness of letting go. The happiness of letting go is a sense of ease and comfort derived from releasing the sensual pleasures of the five sense faculties and the unwholesome states that arise from those pleasures. Sensual pleasures of the five sense faculties are dangerous. Attachment to the sensory pleasures is a significant long-term danger. Where there is beauty, progress, exquisite performance, fragrant aromas, and pleasing sensations, one can easily attain a state of peace and comfort. This is quite understandable. However, when one speaks of a place devoid of the five sensual pleasures, yet refers to it as a place of peace and happiness, it may seem rather strange at first. Nevertheless, true happiness does indeed arise from the cessation of sensual desires. A mind that retreats from unwholesome states means that the mind has avoided various forms of disturbance. At that point, disturbances do not have the opportunity to arise, as their direct cause, the five desires, has been removed. Hence, we observe that the term jhana encompasses another meaning when the four jhana factors manifest in the absence of the five desires. Therefore, disturbances will swiftly dissipate. Thus, jhana is not merely the attainment of jhana or the experience of deep states, but also signifies the act of elimination. It is a fire that burns away disturbances. The relationship between the mind and jhana. In the development of deep states, the two factors of mind and jhana are very important. The two components of attention and focus in this context are closely interrelated. Suppose you possess an antique blackened bronze vase. If you wish to polish the vase to make it shine, you must use a cloth to perform this task. One hand holds the vase, the other hand holds the cloth, and you rub the cloth against the vase. If you patiently polish, after a while, the vase will be gleaming. Similarly, a meditator must keep their mind focused on the primary object, like the abdomen rising and falling. By maintaining awareness there, you rub the attention against the object until disturbances vanish. At that point, the meditator will truly grasp the reality of what is occurring at that point. The meditator will clearly understand the process of the rising and falling motion. If the secondary object becomes stronger than the primary object, the meditator must apply both attention and focus to acknowledge the new object. Holding the vase is akin to maintaining attention, while polishing the vase represents focus. If the meditator merely holds the vase without polishing, then the tarnish will persist. If the meditator wishes to polish the vase but does not hold it firmly, they will also be unable to polish it. This illustrates the interdependence of attention and focus. To draw a circle, you need a compass. You must anchor the pointed tip onto the page, keep the pointed tip still, and move the other end to create a circle. The pointed tip is analogous to attention, while the rotating part is analogous to focus. If the pointed tip is not anchored, how can you draw a circle? If the pointed tip is anchored, but you do not rotate the other end, you will still not create a circle. Thus, attention directs itself towards the object, while focus applies itself to or polishes the attention upon the object. Attention and focus are mutually dependent and interrelated. Intuitive intelligence. Many people believe that attention is equivalent to thinking, reasoning, and logic. This interpretation is incorrect in the context of insight meditation. Westerners are educated from a young age to utilize their intelligence to consistently seek answers to why and how. However, this kind of thinking and seeking is not suitable for insight meditation. There are two types of intelligence, one derived from learning and the other from practice. While meditating, one directly contemplates the absolute truth or ultimate reality. One must truly experience it without thinking. This is the only way to attain insight or wisdom related to a thorough understanding of the nature of phenomena. One can read a great deal about what constitutes the ultimate truth, but without direct practice, wisdom will not arise. The reason that meditation or silent meditation can help us achieve tranquility without directly leading to wisdom is that this form of meditation focuses on the concept of reflection or conventional truth. Meanwhile, precise meditation focuses on absolute truth or ultimate reality. It is remembered that engaging in precise meditation can lead to wisdom without going through the process of thought. The insights gained from precise meditation lead to wisdom because they are the result of direct observation of ultimate reality or absolute truth. When you have an apple before you, someone might tell you that this apple is juicy, sweet, and wonderful. You can look at the apple and think that this apple must indeed be juicy and surely very sweet. You might think, maybe so perhaps, but only when you take a bite will you truly know its actual qualities. Precise meditation also teaches that you can imagine what certain experiences might be like, but you can only obtain the real experience by diligently practicing the correct method. Once you have attained wisdom, you no longer need to exert effort analyzing the qualities of the apple. Please subscribe to the Ancient Wisdom channel to not miss out on exciting videos.